Welcome back to the B6 Track Car series. I'm Chris, and in this episode, I'm going to be doing some exhaust and suspension work on the car, and learning a few new skills. So it's been a minute. To recap, in the last episode I introduced this as my new track focus project and installed a couple of goodies from 034. And then everyone proceeded to tell me that I bought the wrong car, and that instead of using the car that I paid less than $1,000 for from a family member, that I should pay even more money for a different car that I don't already have. Just like people enjoy things. In this episode, as I mentioned, I'll be doing some exhaust and suspension upgrades. And I'd be lying if I said everything goes according to plan. What was supposed to be just a simple exhaust install video quickly turned into a lot more, but snowballing has kind of been the theme with this car so far, and I'm honestly surprised I didn't get as carried away as just completely swapping out the engine already, but luckily that didn't happen. Yet. Let's get into it. So to start off, I'm installing a full 2.5-inch exhaust to give the car a little more power and really just make it more fun to drive. And for a high quality car like this, I went for high quality exhaust. This OBX catback exhaust from eBay, and it is just the quality you would expect from an eBay exhaust. But it was cheap, and this car is nothing special. I considered going for a more expensive quality option, but I just couldn't justify spending more on the exhaust than I did on the entire vehicle. So, eBay it is. I also got downpipes for the car, and with these downpipes being somewhat temporary along with the engine, I thought I'd try to save some money and see if B6 S4 downpipes work on the 3-liter. There have been some rumors here and there on the forums that that combination actually works, because they have the same flange and are about the same shape, but there's no real definitive answer, so it'll be interesting to see if they actually work. But here's what I got. So I have excess power downpipes. Similar to the catback, these are the cheaper option of exhaust you can find. And at first glance, it looks like they're almost a match, but we're gonna find out. And if they don't work, then we're gonna start cutting and have somebody weld, because I still can't weld, still don't have a welder. So. With the whole exhaust off, it's time to see how everything fits. Unfortunately, it's becoming clear pretty quickly that these downpipes are close to fitting, but not quite there. The first problem is that the holes on the flanges aren't large enough to fit on the manifolds, so I had to open those up. The other big issue is that the flex pipes get stuck on the cross member here and won't sit flush on the manifolds. So what do you do when your exhaust doesn't fit? You go to your nearest Harbor Freight and buy your first low-tier welder. This is my first time welding ever, so I took a couple of days to practice before this with some old piping, which I would say helped, but at the end of the day it's still flux core booger welding with little to no experience on my end, so no, I'm not going to show any close-ups of the welds on this video. That would probably violate YouTube's terms and conditions somehow. Anyway, after a lot of back and forth mocking up, cutting, tacking, cutting, swearing, hurting, crying, I finally got the exhaust relatively sorted, including realigning one of my mufflers. And while I was under there, I also managed to install my 034 transmission mount. Alright, it's a new day. Took a little bit into the night to finish this up, but finally done. So we can finally listen to it and figure out if it was actually worth all this effort, or if I should have just, purchased the right thing from the start. But I learned how to weld. Side note, I don't know why I always pick the hottest days to be on camera, but I look disgusting. car sounds okay, about as good as you can expect it to sound with this bunk setup, but so I'm gonna do a little more work on it to get a little bit of the rasp out of there. And luckily, my brother came in clutch again. He had an old exhaust that I'm gonna cut up, an old exhaust from his Mark 6. And what I'm gonna do is just take the 2 downpipes, join them into one, add this muffler, and then tee it back out to the rest of it. And hopefully that'll act as kind of like a muffling X pipe, and it will be useful in the future for if whatever I swap into there only has one downpipe. So that's the plan for now. Let's see if I can't make this sound worse. Okay, so the rasp is mostly gone, and it sounds better than it did before, still not great, but I'm gonna leave it as is. And I'm sure plenty of you have already commented that flux core welding isn't great and it's gonna rust. I know, but it was good fat practice for me being a first-time welder, and honestly, after hearing this, it's a temporary setup, so when it rusts, I'll replace it. So, moving on. But now it's time to move to my favorite modification, suspension. And for this car I went with recently developed FunctionWorks coilovers. If you've been with my channel for a while, you'll know that FunctionWorks has been my longest running sponsor. So when I learned they were developing their own suspension, I jumped on board immediately. So these are 32-way adjustable FunctionWorks coilovers. They also have preload adjustment, so unlike Racelands or FKs that when you adjust the height you also adjust the preload, these you can adjust those independently. They also come with thicker shock bodies, allowing for a more comfortable ride. And with these, you get to pick the color of the collar and dust boot, which is pretty neat. But enough talk, let's get them installed. Well, the front suspension is pretty straightforward. The rear is something else. For a car that's relatively rust-free, the rear suspension took me for a ride. This car is a fantastic example of German over-engineering. It took a lot of hours, some cut springs, don't worry, they're not being reused, and a couple of broken bolts, but once everything was out, it was pretty easy to get the new suspension in. But there was one thing I had to quick address with the rear shocks. Here's the factory shock, and this goes on there, and the bump stop fits right in there. The new ones are a little bit different. The bump stop is down below this boot, so the whole design is a little bit different. And with this on top of there, kind of have to fish your fingers in there, and kind of sucks. And since there's no bump stop that needs to fit in here anymore, I just cut this off, and then it'll fit on, no problem, and I'll be able to adjust this as much as I need. So, quick cut, and then shocks go in the car. All right, this looks much better, but there's one more change in the looks I can do. If you remember the last episode, I said that I had to give my winter tires back to my brother. That's still true, and that includes these Volkswagen wheels, because these were stock on his Mark 6 and he wants them back for his winter car. But I have a solution for that. These are my new wheels, and might not look new because they're not. These are the factory wheels for my B8, and I gotta say, they've been around the block. These were obviously on my A4. I had them on my Mark IV for a little bit, with adapters of course, and then I ran them on my van for a little bit before I sold it. And I don't know, they've looked good on everything. I like the look of these, and I feel like they're kind of slept on. Unfortunately, these are not lightweight wheels. They're not RPF 1s or Graham Lights. But what they do have is some fresh meat. They're already dirty just from like rolling on the ground because they're so sticky. These are Falcon Azenas. They're extreme performance summer tires. They're 200 tread wear, good for autocross. These are honestly kind of the first real set of tires I've ever bought, and I'm super excited about that. They're 235 40s, and I normally have like, you know, rubber band tires, so they look really cool. Yeah, I am going to need to get centering rings, and I'll probably get some spacers just to fill out the wheel well a little bit more and get a little more track width. But I'm going to put these on and see how it looks. So I've had a chance to drive the car for a couple of weeks now, and it is such a dramatic improvement. Before the suspension upgrade, this thing felt like a floaty boat, and it kind of was supposed to, being an entry-level luxury car. But now the car corners substantially better, and overall just feels more planted. Right now I've got all 4 corners set to about 10 clicks from soft, and it rides surprisingly well. I can tell the thicker shock bodies make a noticeable improvement in ride quality, and I can easily say that these are dailyable coilovers, similar to what you might find with BC. So FunctionWorks, you have my seal of approval yet again. And with the new transmission mount from 034, the whole thing just feels a lot more solid. Plus the new wheels and tires, as you would expect compared to an old set of Blizzaks, they are a little bit grippier. Did I mention I'm really excited to own a real set of tires? And to top it all off, the exhaust isn't perfect, but it does make for a more exciting driving experience. Whether it adds any sort of actual power bump, it's probably very minimal. The car is still incredibly slow, but it is more exciting and takes it like one step further away from Grandpa spec. And even though it was kind of a long adventure to get to this point with the exhaust and everything, it was a fun learning experience, and it pushed me out of my comfort zone to do something I haven't done before. And the welds they're still dog shit. But I do value the knowledge that I gained in the process, and I more so look forward to improving my skills and actually MIG welding with gas in the future, and just developing new fabrication skills. And with that, this thing's ready for its first little track excursion. And I gotta say, with just wheels and a drop, this thing looks a hell of a lot better. There's still plenty to do, like adjustable control arms, bushing, sway bars, a better engine, but that's stuff to look forward to in the future. This whole episode was supposed to be me prepping for a 2-day autocross event here in Madison. That unfortunately got canceled, so I won't be doing that anymore, but I was able to find a different local event that I'll be doing soon, so that'll be the next episode. Until then, thanks for watching.